ladies and gentlemen, I would like to start by welcoming you all to this 18th conference arranged by the Gulf Insurance Federation in cooperation with the Emirates Insurance Association. The subject is insurance sustainability. The subject or the topic has been put forward by Yasser Baharnem, and I thought of asking him the first question, why you have chosen this topic.
Thank you very much. I believe this is the question you asked, Bassam, is something that the whole industries, not just insurance, are facing with. It is definitely a force to be reckoned with in the future. The whole issue of sustainability had its roots in sustainable finance, if we go back. Then the world developed and sustainable finance went into sustainable in all industries. So insurance has not been excluded. There will be a time to discuss with the honorable guest over here the United Nations principles on sustainability and how that framework has shaped the whole insurance industry. And following from this, there is also various initiatives, most notably what they call the net zero initiative. And we will talk about this. But really, sustainable insurance is the opportunity for us, insurance companies, to demonstrate the value of insurance and strengthening the public credibility. We all knew, since we joined this business, that our main function of insurance companies is to provide indemnity for the injured, for the affected, etc. So this is really a classical example where insurance companies come in a broader framework for the sustainability aspect. Sustainability, it's only achievable, in my opinion, if the business, our businesses, acts in a responsible and fashion to maintain integrity at all times. Various sustainability initiatives are around us, and we will have the discussion around it. But to really give you the focus over here, sustainability and insurance is related. Today, the whole idea of insurance, if you even think about it, what is the role of insurance? The role of insurance in the larger scheme of things is a benevolent activity. So we help those who are injured, who have claims. So this is really a CSR initiative by far and large, if you think about it. However, it's not just the claims ability to paying ability. There are many others, and we will discuss with all the colleagues over here how the letters E and S and G stand for. So I will pause over here. I could talk, but I also wanted to have the opportunity for others to interact, and then we can grill them with some questions.
I think, Yasser, based on what you have said, it's very important to recognize the harmony that is now established between the financial institutions as well as the social responsibility. Today, it's not that financial institution, you look at the balance sheet, income statement, and you decide how much profit you have made. You need to look at also the responsibility that the institutions, companies have toward the society. And I look backward to see how this concept has evolved over time, and you see that probably going back to the time of colonization, where you have countries colonize other, abusing the natural resources, and moving from there to the concept of the countries of the north, countries of the south. And all this have evolved. These countries started having the responsibility towards the countries where it has been I would say taken advantage of, and the concept started evolving from that time, whereby we know that the social responsibility for the rich towards the poorer, for example. You know, we used to call the countries either developed or third party. Now it's moved from developed to developing. So all these things started evolving and developing, and I'm sure by time, and as we will hear from the colleagues during the session, it became part of the legal framework that is imposed upon the companies to follow. Probably what I would ask Ala, since last year you had the COP27 in Egypt, it's good to know the experience that you gained from that, let's say, conference. What are the takeouts you had from the conference? Noting that, I have read, I followed that, it has a great success, but probably looking at the results, there are some question mark whether it has achieved the objective, especially with the support of the, let's say, rich countries toward the poorer ones.
Thank you very much, Bassam. The whole world actually come together. We have about 35,000 attendees at the COP27 Sharm el-Sheikh in November. And the main advantage of the COP27, it was the COP for implementation. So there was main five takeaways from the COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh. For the first time, the attendees agreed to put together a fund for the countries that had been hit by the floods, the droughts, and other climate disasters. So this was the first takeaway that we have seen from the COP27. That was actually a great achievement. To be honest, the implementation will start very soon. They have put together a committee. This committee will meet before the end of March, March 23, 2023, and they will start the implementation and try to put together this fund. This is a very important achievement of the COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh. The other thing that they have come up with is the other takeaway is mobilizing for financial support for developing countries. This is also a very important initiative that they have agreed for. And the most important one is maintaining a clear intention to keep 1.5 degrees within. That means that all the efforts should be put together in order to reduce the 1.5% degree for the emission, because this is really an important one. In order to keep this planet in a very safe mood and resilience, we need to reduce the 1.5 degree. This will involve a lot of efforts from all the countries, and I think we as an insurance companies, I think we will discuss this also, we have a big role to play in this particular one.
I understand the target for reducing the emission by 1.5 was not endorsed by all countries. Probably some of the industrial did not play a positive role in that, Ala.
That's true, but actually this was one of the recommendations for the COP27. And I think the committees that has been put together will start working very soon on this. And this is also very important because, as you know, that the COP28 will be here in UAE. So I think this will help also. And I believe that UAE is getting also involved in these committees. Usually when you have the COP, you have the champion of the COP26, champion COP27, and these committees are working together with the champion in order to put it clear that we have to reduce the 1.5% degree. And I believe there are some resistance because, as you said, some industries, for instance, paper industries are not really in favor of this. And we have to be careful that if we don't go by reducing the 1.5% degree, this will really have a bad effect on the planet.
Yeah, you opened a Pandora box of questions here, Bassam. This 1.5 is really a target set by the Paris Accord or the Paris Agreement. It's technically a target. You can go between 2 and 1.5, but the devil is in the details because there are various types of emissions and they categorize them 1, 2, and 3. I'm not going to go through details. Some are direct as a polluter, some as an indirect. For example, you are a supplier and so forth. So a lot of companies are still dabbling with the issue of how to measure these. And if it's the 1.5 you are talking about over here, it is basically the temperature rise and the correlation. But this is again a technical or a scientific debate. I want to just get an overview here. Let's begin with this ECG. E, environmental, S, social, G, as in governments. As Mr. Ala has said, there is, E is the closest thing to the insurance heart because a lot of the risks that we cover inevitably are climate related or acts of God related. So we do have definitely an interest to try to reduce and to not harm the environment through these emissions, through these changes, through building houses near coastal pools, construction, the type, etc. But let me ask the panelists, and maybe we can start with Stuart over here, representing Daman. What is it that you feel the insurance industry can do more on the E side? Just let's talk on the E side, on the environmental.
On the E side, well, I think generally the insurance industry can do more in terms of loss prevention. It has a huge amount of experience in trying to understand the risks, trying to understand how to mitigate those risks. And it's really about trying to intervene and work with governments, other organizations, companies, to see how they can reduce down that risk. And so, prevention is the main aspect here. It's about giving good advice. It's about making sure that we're engaging with our clients. We're not just, and I think this is going to come out in the conversations, it's not just about us being the payer of losses. It's about us being much more participative in evaluating risk, evaluating the probability of loss, and trying to work with those organizations, those companies, to stop that happening in the first place.
Yeah.
No, I just thinking, I have on my left Ala and I have on my right Raed, and especially now we're moving from COP27 to COP28, where this year we have the UAE as the year where it will be hosting the conference. You, Raed, being the person responsible for the corporate governance within ADNIC, how do you see that, and how this can be impacting the process of the ECG within the UAE, especially if we see now more and more of the regulators, especially central bank, imposing this on the companies?
Thank you very much. Back again to your question, Bassam. We've been hearing during the last 2 decades about the governance, corporate governance, and it's only recently in the UAE when we started to hear about ESG, environmental, social, and governance, including the governance part. I would like also to answer part of Mr. Yasser's question about the role of the insurance companies in this regard in the environmental, and I will come back to your question. As insurance companies, we're not an industry, we're financial sectors. When it comes to our operations, it will be very limited when it comes to environment preservation from our operation, such as reducing the consumption of electricity or water. It's important, but it's very limited. Where, as an insurance company, we can help. We can help from the products that we sell to the public. For example, we know that there is electric cars, hybrid cars, vehicles. We can, as an insurance industry, give incentives to the owners of those vehicles by giving reductions in the rate. So this is where insurance companies can help. Another example is the household, the greenhouse, whereby less premiums will be imposed to the owners of those houses. Another example is in construction. If we know for a fact that this project is environmentally friendly, we need to support the project owner by giving discounts on the premium. So it is about the products where we can help as an insurance company. At the end of the day, everyone will benefit about it. As ESG report, as I mentioned, thanks to the regulators in the UAE, they've been introducing it, whether it is ESCA Securities and Commodities Authorities in cooperations with the markets, whether it is ADEX or Dubai Exchange Market. What is being requested for the time being is to submit a report, an ESG report only, whether it is 50 pages, 30 pages. All the companies, listed companies, are required now to submit this report. What is really required is an assessment, a grade to those reports. Currently, those reports are submitted to the regulators. No one is assessing or giving grades about it. So this is one of the recommendations that we need to see in the market. We've started to see even the rating agencies, the credit rating agencies, asking for these reports. Part of their assessment to the companies when it comes to the credit assessment, they ask for the ESG, and they've started to discuss it with the management of the companies. So it is there, it is happening.
So insurance companies played a role in is during the COVID-19. I think with the problematic that the society has faced, insurance has played a major role in supporting the society. So I think this is part of the what insurance can do, and I think Daman, if we speak about Daman, also had played a major part in that, and if you can talk to us about that.
Ra'ed, I just, if you allow me, just because a topic like this is multifaceted. I just want to follow up on 2 points you mentioned. First, of course, the sustainability reports, which is going to be part of the corporate governance report or a separate report. As you said, it could be 50 pages, 1 page, and I guess this is one of the coming to be one of the regulatory requirements. Why I ask my question is really a dichotomy which this industry here, particularly in the Gulf, has to answer. We are in the midst of a very heavily pollutant, carbon-intensive industry over here. Yet, the way we are all heading, if we follow the sustainability and the carbon neutral, is inevitably the industry has to transform itself into renewable energy. This is not going to take 5-10 years. This is a long-term process. So what is our role as insurance companies? How do we aid in this transition? Will the day come that insurance companies will not be able to cover carbon-based industries because there will be little reinsurance? You see, in the West or developed countries, as Bassam said, there is a strong activist movements, which is really how this whole ESG came about. Activists come and say, pollutants, you insurance companies, banks, etc., they demand change. So insurance companies and the industries reform. They also come and say, oh, there is no board diversity. You have to have people with different racial, different backgrounds, different nationalities. So we do the same thing. The same thing going to the S, the social responsibility. Do you, for example, insure factories or products which engage in, I call it slavery, or people who are working below age, etc. So there is a lot of, we don't have this in our, it's basically the regulator who is driving this. I'm sorry making the question long, but it's in 2 parts. Really, how do we address this imbalance where we are over here? And secondly, the broader issue is, do insurance companies have to just wait until the regulator says so? Address to you, to Stuart, to Mr. Ala.
Yeah, I have a comment actually to make here because Yasser opened a very important subject. We have seen recently some reinsurers stop writing business that could affect the ESG badly. And there was a very clear example when some contractors were building a dam in Africa, and that was about $8 billion project. And all the reinsurers from Europe, US, Bermuda, refrained from writing this business, and the contractors started the building the dam. And the reason was because it will demolish a life of 50,000 persons in Africa in this particular place, because all the land around the dam will be demolished when the dam will be finished. And considering the S, the social, the reinsurer from Europe refrained from writing this business. And the contractor stayed 1 year without any reinsurer, and then some reinsurer from other parties in the world agreed to write part of this business, not all the business. So it's very important to think about your question. Are we going to do the same one day if someone come and say, okay, I'm going to insure a paper factory, and I tell them, no, the paper is against the ESG concept? This is really a question that we have to ask ourselves. Are we ready this now or not yet?
Yeah, I guess let me bring it to the situation of the pandemic. I think we've got to understand that we're not going to be able to solve this in isolation. We are going to have to work with governments, with regulators, with providers of services, as well as us as insurers, to find ways of being able to overcome these types of situations. And if I take the pandemic as an example, we worked extremely closely with the regulator. We worked with the providers, the medical providers, and looked at ways in which we could address some of the situations that were coming up. We actually started to work remotely very, very quickly. We started to work with providers to bring about things like teleconsultations, which obviously has a byproduct itself of being certainly better environmentally if you can have those kind of services delivered remotely rather than getting in your car and driving to a hospital. So those kind of things were being done. We also started to do some predictive modelling to try and see where some of the issues were arising and how we could start to advise providers, advise the regulator of what was happening. And certainly things like long-term care, the provider community geared up for long-term care far quicker and has a much better platform to deliver that now. So actually, the way that we work with the government organisations and agencies, the UAE came out of the pandemic extremely well because of that cooperation. And I think there needs to be a lot more of that cooperation between all of the different stakeholders when we're trying to find environmental and sustainable solutions for insurance risks.
I agree. I even think Daman has played a major role in supporting scientific centers here in the UAE, particularly in Abu Dhabi, like the Stem Cell Center, where they have worked on developing some anti-COVID virus vaccines, and they contribute to that, they supported them, and I think this is a very important step that Daman has taken.
Yeah, and I think we're recognizing that we do have to work with all of those stakeholders more, I guess, more intensively than we did before. Before the pandemic, there's a lot of frictional cost, and there still is a little bit in our industry. There's backwards and forwards dialogue between providers and insurers. And what we want to try and do is take that away. The regulator here, certainly on the health side in the UAE, has been extremely progressive. We have a lot of digitization. We have a lot of automation, which is obviously extremely helpful when we're looking at ESG. What we need to do is to try and stop the backwards and forwards, I guess, slightly confrontational approach that we have between payers and providers. And I think the pandemic has helped with that. And I think we have to work even more closely to try and do that. It's about bringing those parties together because they actually have the same end goal, which is the betterment of the health of the population.
Agree. I mean, this brings me to the issue that Yasser and Ala addressed, which is the role of insurance in providing certain or refraining from providing certain support to certain industries. But I believe, in the GCC in general, we were just speaking at the level of the Gulf Insurance Federation about the support that the insurance companies are giving to the different industries. And I think even in the UAE, Raed, certain aspects of the business are becoming compulsory, imposed by regulators. For example, the pollution for the oil companies in order to be able to operate in the UAE or even Saudi Arabia, even Bahrain, I know for a fact, they have to have, for example, covers for pollution. And this is very important because there were incidents that happened, and without that insurance, probably companies would have really faced serious difficulties, and from then the society in general.
Yes, actually, the insurance companies has a major role in risk management when it comes to the pollution. Yes, they are providing the cover, but yet at the same time, they cannot prevent the risk occurring. So they need to play a major role when it comes to the risk management, i.e. pre-risk occurrence. By advising the client, by imposing certain conditions, warranties on the policies. So this is one of the initiatives. Yes, the compulsory pollution indemnity covers, but as I mentioned, the insurance companies need to be proactive, not just providing the cover and sit down. They need also to play the role of a risk manager somehow to their customers in order to prevent the occurrence of such losses.
How do you spread ESG knowledge in-house in the company?
Yeah, actually, we need to be ready because when the regulator asks for the report for the ESG, it means that it's not only about insurance company implementing the ESG sustainable rules with the clients, but also within the insurance company itself. I give an example from the company that I'm managing. We agreed for one day to have a paperless day. And we've been able and successful by, I would say, 90%, that we did not use paper in this day. So if all the market agreed the same, will really help in reducing the emissions. So this is one of the things. The other thing is the social aspects. You need to create the social aspects within the mentality of all the employees. So it's not only giving donations. It's about them to go out and see how they can help in terms of the CSR. So this is really an important thing that you have to create within the staff. We've been able to do this. Actually, we got even reward from the regulator on the sustainable aspects that we have implemented. And when you come into our office, you will see the 17 sustainable rules in front of you, and it's actually in front of everyone. And we're trying to implement most of them. So this has to be an effort that's come from the top management to the staff, and then the staff has to understand it and try to implement it on a daily basis.
Yeah, I was going to say, you have to embed it within the business itself and make sure it becomes a key objective of the business.
So how do you translate it in Daman as a strategy? What do you do? Just give us an example.
Well, if I take one of the primary goals, good health and well-being. So we're looking at that not only from how we deliver our services. So how do we translate good health and well-being into the services we provide? I think we talked before about the fact that insurers have typically just been the payers of losses. We need to get far more into the healthcare continuum. How do we have people remain healthy? How do we make sure that they understand what some of their behaviours will potentially lead to? So how do we get more education out there? How do we start to have them mitigate some of their risks of developing conditions? How do we start to put together disease management programs to make sure they're able to manage their health better? So actually, the last thing we want them to do is to be going into hospital and getting treatment. So we need to be active far earlier in that cycle. We also need to be looking at mental health, which has obviously become hugely in the public eye now. Particularly with some of the isolation that was created because of the pandemic. So how do we look after our members, our users, but also how do we look after our employees? Because again, it's exactly the same thing for them. We have a responsibility to look after them and their well-being. Similarly, it's about how we start to translate some of the other things that we've got within the main development goals. So how do we create innovative products? How do we make sure that there's affordability? How do we make sure that things like responsible consumption and production? I mean, one of the things that we've got within our environment in health is an overdiagnosis, an overutilization of services. How do we, as insurers, start to address that? So when I look at, I guess, our industry, and when I look at some of the goals that we've got for sustainable development, I can see them there, and we're obviously, as a business, acting upon those.
Now, I hear what you're saying, and what comes to my mind. Whenever there is an issue, insurance comes as a solution, always, other than looking at health. But you look at the case of the unfortunate event in Turkey, Syria, and some other parts, earthquake. In Turkey, for example, the insurance industry stepped in some years ago and created a fund, an earthquake fund, and pool to cover in case an incident, to avail a certain cover for those fortunate, and pay for them at least for rebuilding whatever has been destroyed. Unfortunately, what I have heard, like Syria, on the other hand, because of the, let's say, the longevity of the return period of the non-existent thought of such event, no such fund has been put in place. But for Turkey, it's a solution for the people. I think even in Algeria, they put forward a pool to look at incidents or events such as earthquake. So this is very important for countries where they are exposed to catastrophe in order to support the society. Not only earthquake, it could be winds, could be floods. And in many countries like Oman, for example, it's a subject to frequent floodings. But I see faces, representative coming from Oman. I don't know of such attempt to create some sort of a pool to cover for events like flooding, hurricanes, sorry? That will be of great help to the society, because I know what happened during Guno and other hurricanes that affected the region. There was no solution, and to a certain extent, even insurance companies as such are not equipped or are not there to cover like catastrophes. Sometimes catastrophes are an excluded event, especially if the magnitude is so large.
Yes, quite appropriate. Right.
Like in the western part of the world, Yasser, in some of the countries, there is serious programs to cover such events.
I mean, this is the whole issue of
like California Earthquake Authority, like in Switzerland, the pool.
This is the public-private sector issue. Do governments take the initiative, or the private sector, or jointly? We can only, as insurance companies in various countries, welcome these efforts in the hope that they become fruitful. Some of these large initiatives had the World Bank behind them, and there are notable examples. Some had governments behind them. Some had strong reinsurers behind them. So I think the dialogue is there. And as you correctly pointed out, catastrophe risks are of the increase, not just because the climate changed and the world around it changed, but also the concentration of some insureds. The values are also increasing. Let me move on, Raed. I have a question for you. We talked about or you referred to the sustainability reports, etc. Can you run us through some of the ESG disclosures? Where do you draw the line? Because I could think of so many ESG disclosures in this report, but are they pertinent or not? Who sets it?
It's a broad question and broad answer. So I will take part of it. The G, the governance. For example, in the UAE, it is required to provide a corporate governance report separate from the ESG. ESG, part of it is the governance. And it is also a detailed report. If you see the disclosures of the companies, between 30 pages, 50 pages, 60 pages. So this is part of the process to issue the report. But this is not enough, because there are certain components mandated by the regulator whereby you need to disclose. For example, how many board meetings you had during the year. How many committee meetings you had during the year? What are the remunerations, bonuses paid for the executive team? Who is your auditor?
This is all in the G, which we are doing.
Yes,
I'm talking more on the E and the S, which are the esoteric parts.
This is the point. I want to reach the point that it's very easy for regulatory purposes that each and every company will submit that report. Behind this report is the important thing. This will lead us, what is good governance? Good governance, it means that you have different functions within the company, starting from the board of directors, board committees, internal controls, compliance, management, and each one of them will know their responsibilities and duties separately. If you would like to see how whether it is a good governance or not is implemented in a certain company, see how decisions are taken. Is it a one-man show, whether it is on the board level or the management level, how decisions are taken? Whether there are certain policies, even if you have policies like the code of conduct, like the insider trading, whistleblowing policy, any company can put those policies, but is it implemented? Is it actually implemented? I want to reach a conclusion that it is left now to the companies. For regulatory purposes, it's very easy to show full compliance, But at the end of the day, it's a gray area, and it is a culture. It should be a culture in each and every company, and it should be from the top down. And the insurance companies, whether on the board level or the management, they need to get convinced that it is for own benefit to have a good governance with their company for continuity purposes and for the prosperity of the company. We have financial and non-financial targets. This is part of the non-financial targets.
I think ESCA for the last 2 years are imposing on the companies, public listed companies, to put in their corporate governance reports their initiatives, their social initiatives.
Yes.
And they monitor it and they impose it on the companies. I mean, a company that does not list serious initiatives, they get questioned. So I think it's playing a major part in the regulators to ensure even other than the G, that the S and E
Yes,
has been
definitely.
seriously followed by the companies?
If you have time, we'll move to the E, and it's my pleasure. Now, if we go to the S, social, now you need to show equality when it comes to the employment, the structure of the board. You need to have a female representative in the board. You need to have equality regardless of the religion of the employees or their ethnic or their language, etc. All those will come under the social responsibility. Environment, I think we elaborated on it, what is required, to how insurance companies, and not just insurance company, how any public listed companies. By the way, in Europe, it is mandated, the ESG, for a companies more than 500 employees. Now the regulation is being reviewed to reduce it to 250 employees with a certain turnover annually, and whether it is a publicly listed company or a private company. Currently, what is required in the UAE market, at least as far as I know, it is the publicly listed company. So maybe down the road we will be seeing that this requirement will be expanded to include other limited liabilities companies or foreign branches companies.
Let's expand on this. I question to you, Ala. The financial industry has invented this carbon credits, which is a mechanism, as you must know, for polluters to make good on their sins. And it goes through various examples, even to the degree you buy an airline ticket, and at the end it tells you, do you want to offset the carbon footprints? And you say yes, and it's $10 or $20 and so forth. Maybe we will hear about this tomorrow, etc. But do you think, again, we are insurers, we take risks, and we have to insure these risks. Some of these risks, industries, factories, products, people, are good people, they are good ESG, and there are bad ESG, but this is our role. So what do you do vis-a-vis this? Is there a carbon offset type of an insurance solution? Just your thoughts.
Yeah, I think you mentioned two things. Yes, sir. The first one is the non-financial market has created these bonds now, and it's been around for 2 or 3 years now. But we have a very good example that we try to see how the market react for this. And we understand that in order to go for these bonds, you need to have the infrastructure first within the insurance market ready. So you have to have, like Bassam mentioned, the Turkish market has a pool. So whenever you have a market getting together and putting a pool for such natural catastrophic losses, then you can go to the market and get over and above this pool some bonds, some kind of bonds. So this is what we have started. We started the efforts at the Egyptian Insurance Federation to put together a pool for the natural catastrophic risk in order to be able to cover what we could be expected from such events, especially where we know that the whole reinsurance market is providing what we call event limit for such risks. So it's not really enough for some markets to depend on the reinsurance treaties. So you need to have over and above this some capacities.
I just wanted to say, Ala, it even goes beyond this, because typically what these carbon credit markets do, and it's an actively traded within Europe, for example. So they have good companies and you have bad companies. The bad companies, they say, okay, we will continue to be bad companies, but I will buy carbon credits from an exchange. So the good companies put these, the bad companies purchase this, and in return it offsets deforestation. They buy so it's a way to balance. I'm not sure this is the ideal solution, because they are still bad.
Yeah, right, actually, but it depends on how do you see it. Yes, you're right. There is some markets that can agree and accept to buy such credit carbon, but also it's a business at the end of the day. You need to make sure that you're making money out of this as a facilitator, a provider. So whenever you believe that the market is ready to go and get into such installments, financial installment, that will be fine. I haven't seen actually this in our area that we started working with such institutions. What we have seen only is the financial bonds for the catastrophic losses.
Well, I was going to say, I think to a certain extent it's up to the insurance industry or even the regulator to start thinking about whether a levy should be applied in those particular cases. So you've got consistency of pricing, but a levy for those people who have got poor carbon footprints is something that could be considered by the industry.
Well, indirectly they are doing, because today most of the governments, even in developed, provide a subsidy if you have solar panels or if you purchase an electric vehicle. And so these are incentives, positive incentives, but they are really a negative. You see, they are trying to address the same issue through a subsidy. Sorry, Mr.
I think it's becoming a very important and vital concept for the financial institutions, irrespective which industry they work in. But profitability today is getting impacted by how green the companies are. I mean, you look at part of Europe, if you're driving a petrol car, you get taxed. You drive an electrical car, there is no tax for it, you know. Even when you buy the petrol, there is a certain tax for the pollution. UAE, we are moving even towards that, you know, encouraging, I mean, especially in Dubai, electrical cars, for example. But one of the slides that we see behind us is a slide that shows the performance. This is a study done by the United Nations. Just show the results of some of the industries that have managed to perform much better when they follow like the green environment print, you know, trying to implement the SEGs in a serious manner, whereby they protect the environment, they have social responsibilities. So you look at the results, their results, it varies depending on the industry between 5 to 15% improving in results when it's compared to conventional companies. So it has, I mean, even impact on financials if you look at it. And this is something very important because, as we said, that when we speak and look at financials and the profitability of the companies, that is a major, today, implication on the results.
Economic aspects and saying they're all interrelated and they need to be done in a sustainable way. So sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, a decent working environment and economic growth, industry, innovation, infrastructure. So there was a lot more on that bit around how do we look after the environment.